Today we're replacing the alternator on this 2003 Subaru Baja. The battery warning light and the brake warning light are on in the dash. We tested the alternator and it's not charging. So before you remove the alternator, disconnect the battery so you do not shock yourself. Then we're going to take these shields out of our way. You take this 10, this 10, this 10, and that'll remove the shields. You do have to loosen the belts to replace the battery. These belts are in pretty good shape, but if yours were cracked, then I would recommend doing both jobs together. Once you get the first little shield off, take this bolt out of the way. This holds the shield on, and it's also a bolt that holds the alternator in place. You want to disconnect this green connector, just push in the back tab, slide it up, and then take this nut off so that you can take this cable out. This connector can be a bit of a pain sometimes, but you can see how if I push down on the back here, that's how it loosens the hold down. Once you loosen this front hold down bolt a bit, you can see how I can slide the shield out of my way. So on this bolt there is a washer that you don't want to drop, and then also you want to hold this back nut because if you drop it down into the engine it can be difficult to find. If I was just replacing the belt, I would loosen this bolt, loosen this little nut down in here, and then twist the adjuster so it drops the alternator down, loosens the belt so you can replace it. To replace the alternator, we've got to pull this bolt all the way out, this guy also all the way out. This adjuster bolt also has a washer on it, so make sure that you don't drop that out when you're pulling it all the way loose. Like I said, this belt is in pretty good condition, so we're just going to loosen it enough to slide it out of our way instead of replacing it with the alternator. You might have to take a small pry bar and gently pry the alternator up out of its position. Before installing any new parts, I always do a side-by-side inspection and make sure there's no hardware that I need to swap over. Some new alternators don't come with a pulley, so you have to swap pulleys. This new one has one already, so that's one less step for us, but the pulley just has this big nut that holds it in place, so it's not too difficult to replace. The reason we had to pry this alternator out is because this sleeve here, it's part of the hold down. You see on the new one it's flush with the casing, and on this one it's kind of out a little bit. If I was reinstalling this alternator after I had rebuilt it, I would take a small hammer and tap this back in place so that it was flush again, so I wouldn't be fighting getting the alternator back into its spot. When installing the alternator, I make sure I get all the bolts started before I tighten anything down. You don't want to tighten down this bolt and then be fighting everything on the other side. Just like IKEA furniture, keep everything loose until you're ready to snug everything down. So also when I tighten the belt, see how you can see how deep the threads were because it's shiny and clean. I generally tighten it to where it was before. You don't want to over tighten the belt or you'll put stress on it. Once you have the belt tightened, you should be able to turn it like this, but not more than that. Sometimes belts will loosen up over time and need to be readjusted, so you might have to come back in here if you're squealing first thing in the morning and tighten it again, but right now this looks pretty good. I went ahead and installed my alternator in my belt and replugged in the battery so I could test it. You can see with my charger there's no warning lights. Also on the dash, warning lights are off, so now I'll go ahead and reinstall the shields. After you get everything back together, road test the vehicle, make sure no warning lights come on, do another visual inspection, make sure your belts look good, make sure there's no tools under the hood, and you should be good to go.